Hi everyone, it's Katie. Thank you for coming to my channel. And I wanted to go back a little bit into my past and talk about why I am here right now talking about neurodivergency, ADHD, autism, anything in the spectrum, and chronic illness, and what my journey has been. So I will preface this is that I'm not going to talk about specific diagnoses. They are for me to know. And I do kind of agree with when other people talk about their chronic illness. Sometimes it really matters to talk about specific symptoms, but that is not to the core of what this channel is about. I think there's a lot of support forums, and if for some reason you and I connect about certain symptoms, about certain diagnosis of some kind, we could handle that in DMs or something separate or more private or working one-on-one, because that's part of my business, is that I support people who are going through this. But I don't feel it's necessary to go into all the details of those because this channel has a different focus. What I do think is common between all of these things is the overwhelm. So being neurodivergent is a lot for a brain to handle, and a lot different. It's a very different way of processing the world. And so a lot of my senses are heightened. And something like bright lights that are kind of on right now can kind of they can really affect a lot of people. Like some people could not have these bright lights on at all. And some people need bright lights on just to see things. They're like, I want to see things clearly because that's just how my eyes work. So there's that whole range, but also having that constant input of something that kind of wears you down, it builds up. It's not just like this solid line of like, okay, I'm here, and then, it went up here because of like my brain processes. Because now the lights are on, it's more like this. It like builds up. I'm trying to think of what that word is. I'll think of it later. Where it's just like stacks on top of one another, kind of like compound interest, I guess. And so some of my sensitivities are light. It's clothing that, like here I am adjusting my clothing, having restrictive clothing or anything with an itchy tag. Sometimes I don't like a lot of the clothing on my skin. So I'll wear very, just shorts and t-shirt a lot, or pajamas. I do a lot in my pajamas. I'm trying to think. Let's see. I do have some taste aversions, although I think my son has a lot right now. And especially, I know in my family, it was a lot of like food aversions and things happened when we were younger, but then kind of grew out of it. And then some people just don't grow out of it. So whenever I say someone's like picky about food, I understand. I get it. Like, if something's too crunchy or too soft or something like is unexpected, or, certain kind of donuts can really like move one people into a category of like, nope, that's not for me. And yes, that is for me. Some people don't like jelly in their donuts. Some people don't like cream in their donuts, and other people love that kind of stuff. So, yeah, I didn't really realize all of that until I had my son diagnosed with autism. So when he was diagnosed, I finally looked back and was like, oh, I relate so much to this. So that was in my late 30s, close to 40. And I just then saw, oh, wait, my father was probably autistic too. And that's why he became a school psychologist, actually. I think he recognized that in himself. He didn't talk about it at all. Like, we never talked about that. But he would help kids who were like him. He wasn't good at making eye contact, and he would stutter a lot when he talked. And very quiet a lot of the time, and deep thinker. So I miss him. So he wasn't around when my son was born, and I kind of miss that opportunity of having him, like, first just meet my son, right? Just knowing my son, but to have that connection of maybe guiding some of the thought processes around how to support him. So I reflected upon my own childhood and how there were times where I would be just so upset about things. A lot of, like, kind of black and white thinking, expectations going totally awry, like, and having meltdowns. I was labeled as moody and emotional, yet it should have been labeled as, like, meltdowns. And I've learned how to expand my capacity for understanding. Now I can, have someone say, well, this is my viewpoint though. And I'm like, oh, I really can empathize and look at things through their eyes. And I won't know 100%. I will never know 100% what it's like to be them. No one can ever claim that. But I can stop and pause and try to imagine what it's like to be in their shoes, even if I've never experienced something like that. I can really picture in my mind, like, what would it be like to stand right there, to then go through a situation like that, to really think into it. And it's almost like a movie that plays in my mind. And I think a lot of people empathize that way, but yeah. So I remember my current therapist at the time. I've been in therapy a long time. My current therapist was like, are you sure you don't have ADD? And I'm like, I don't think so. Like, I can sit down and concentrate on things. But what kept coming up was there was this one project I was doing for work that I kept putting off, and this was the first time I really felt this. Like, I felt it somewhat with a lot of projects, and then I would push through. But this project was so big, and I had such high expectations for it, and it was such an important thing that I kept pushing it off, and it was literally painful to even think about doing it. And I just kept asking, why is it so hard? Why is it so hard? This is not a morning routine. This is not keeping my house clean. This is not anything else. This is a client project, and I'm working so hard, and there's no one else to really bring on to help me through this. And what it took was kind of watching a show or listening to something to totally distract my mind into the rumination. Like, I was ruminating on and catastrophizing this thing. Like, I didn't think it's going to all go bad. It was just like thinking I wasn't capable of doing it. And so I pushed through. There were some really long nights, and this was like when I knew I was a web designer up until that point. This was all during the 2000s and teens. And I'd be like, I can't ever do this again to myself. I just can't. And so I took an online quiz saying, like, do you have ADHD? And it kind of said no at the time. But then, it wasn't one of the official quizzes. Like, there are much more official and efficient ones that are more accurate out now. But the more I saw on Instagram and everything that talked about ADHD and aversions to things and craving things and having just craving those dopamine hits, and the way my thought processes, this is what it came down to, was that I could hop around in my ideas so quickly that people have trouble keeping up. And I've also mentioned this to my mom. She's the same way. We are like ping pong balls with information, and the people around us, my sister and my husband, are like, I can't keep up with you. What are you talking about right now? And my mom and I are 2 steps ahead because we've made the mental connections. But I realized a lot of people don't operate that way. And that was one of the key things of like, I could go from here to here to here to here, to branching out. And I had a lot of hearing problems growing up, and I had a lot of burst eardrums, and they'd be so painful because I'd be swimming and then get ear infections, and then it would burst in the middle of the night, and it would be so painful, and then it would heal up. But so I always thought like, oh, because they were healed up, maybe I have hearing loss. And I would go to all of these sound tests, and I would raise my hands, and I'd be hearing everything normally. And I even took a test in my 20s doing the same thing because I was like on a lot of allergy medication. And I thought, I just, like the kind with the Sudafed to drain your ears and things. And I thought, I still must be having hearing problems because I'm not understanding what someone else is saying. Everything checked out fine. They're like, you're fine. And they left it at that, which was kind of traumatizing. Like the whole experience was traumatizing because they spray the numbing agent in your nose. They look very far up in there. You have trouble swallowing afterwards. Nothing was explained to me. I'm not going to get into medical trauma right now, but I was in my car sobbing. So after that, I'm like, what is going on with my ears then? Why do I hear people talk and it just sounds like a foreign language to me? And then I learned about auditory processing disorder. And disorder, they're trying to do away with. In the DSM, they're trying to make it a condition instead of a disorder. So when I realized that my ear processing, not my ears, but the way the signals process in my brain were just not lining up, it made a lot of sense. It kind of opened everything up. And I also saw at my child's school, they had this whole presentation on highly gifted kids, and a lot of them are 2E, which means twice exceptional, which means they can be very advanced in a lot of areas, but it also means their brain is trying really hard to catch up in a lot of areas, and they may need a lot of support. And whether it's ear processing, eye processing, because sometimes they can have a lot of sight problems. And yeah, I'm just kind of thinking back to like, that was such a pivotal moment to be at that presentation and hearing about everything, explaining so much about my childhood that I was masking, and that at the time my parents probably couldn't have known because I was excelling at so many subjects, but also my brain was working overtime just to get things done because that was my norm. Like overtime, overwhelm was like the norm. And it didn't feel different because I didn't know any different. I've never felt any different. This is just who I am. So I started, like, from that point on, I started playing with my hearing. And I did this kind of cool experiment where I was hearing 2 things at the same time. I could carry on a conversation and hear a conversation from across the room, and I could go in between them. I'm like, okay, here, 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 and I could take in both of that information and kind of piece it together enough so that I was kind of understanding both at the same time. Or I would listen to a podcast and watch a show with subtitles. And like, I don't really do that anymore, but I wanted to see what my brain could do. So I think that's fun to know what you're capable of and how the brain works. So that was fun, but does it come in handy? Probably only like in a restaurant when you're overhearing other people. And that I always knew before all of that, though, that I always had trouble with my left and right. Like, I can hold up L's. This one looks correct to you, I know. But this one, being my left, this one still looks correct to me. Like, because it's reversed, it still looks correct. So I couldn't just do this and go, oh, this is the correct one. It helped that I got tattoos later, so I could tell. But then I really realized why I had such difficulty spelling. And it was because of dyslexia. So as I've aged and as I've slowed down a little bit, my brain's got a little more tired. I can feel it a lot more now. So if I'm writing notes, there are letters and words that I even just skip over. And so it won't even look like words sometimes. Like, I'll skip over vowels, or it's mainly when the letter that I'm writing next is so similar to the letter that I've just written, or my brain just kind of skips over those. So if it's like an L and you're like, I do a lot of cursive, so I'm swooping up for the L and then an I after that. Like, sometimes I'll just do a lot of L's, or if it's like Lily, I'll do LL and then Y, and then where's the I in there? So it was hard for me it's still hard for me to spell things aloud. I have to write them down. And that's something I practiced with my son a lot. When he was practicing harder words, we would have his whiteboard out, and I said, write it down first, then tell me. Like, you don't need to spell it out loud and keep it all in your head. Like, I think kids do try to push themselves to keep that all in there, but long term, like, then when you are adulthood is put on your shoulders and you have to wear adulthood, then you kind of lose all those. Like, I remember remembering all of the answers to math questions and things. Like, oh, I remember that whole worksheet and all the answers to all those. But could I do it now? No, because I have adulthood and being a parent and all these other details that I'm balancing right now. Like, and I think a lot of moms and parents have to keep, like, their kids' clothes sizes and shoe sizes and all these little details. What's going to be on the menu for the evening? What's our meal plan? Like, all those details are kind of caught up with other things now. And now it's really hard for me to, like, copy a number. So if I'm doing banking or anything, I am double, triple checking. I'm like looking at that number and then looking at that number and looking, because I will see different numbers sometimes. And I have to be really careful of that. But I've set up the banking system that I have on paper and digital. Like, I need both to make sure I don't get the numbers reversed. So, and that's very key. And I check in on it every morning. And I remember my dad being, I was in my 19, 20-ish and kind of learning a lot of things from him. Was like, okay. And I think even before that, like when I was in my teens, of him just saying, okay, let's look at this number. Then let's look at this number. Let's slow down and look at both of those and just triple check. And I think at the time, maybe he had an issue with that. He never talked about it with me. He passed in 2001, so it's been a while. And so that's kind of my neurodivergent story. So then being able to just say, yeah, I'm dyslexic. I have auditory processing condition. And either I am ADHD or autistic, somewhere on that spectrum. And I'm not formally diagnosed, because I do believe that you can self-diagnose. There are a lot of problems in the system where a lot of the DSM diagnoses are based on white cisgendered men. That a lot of females being compared to those standards that we don't apply, but they're expanding those very slowly. But I see a whole lot of conditions on that spectrum, and just saying I'm neurodivergent, and what I zero in on is kind of a combination of autistic and ADHD traits. So there can be that rigidity and seeing things black and white and having meltdowns, but those can kind of overlap into and sensory issues and stuff like that. So the lump sum, I'm in there. And that's enough for me, because I always felt that like there was something wrong with me. So in conjunction with all of that, of having a lot of allergies as a kid, and especially in my 20s, definitely moving from like Portland to Seattle, like I had instant, like something was in bloom up here that was not down there. So I had bad allergies ever since. And then having other chronic illnesses kind of slowly come on top of that. And most recently I had a procedure and being diagnosed with another major one. And again, I don't feel like sharing those yet. Maybe there's a point in this channel that I do. But right now, it's knowing that I need more rest, that I need to take things slower. And like I take things slower for processing information anyway, but then practicing rest for my body, and knowing that I can't do things that other people do, and having to ask for help is the biggest one. I am the oldest of just me and my sister, and there was a lot of just me being independent while she was a baby. There were 4 years between us, so it's kind of, it's not like 2 years where you're kind of growing up together. It was more like we were kind of in separate worlds at that point, because there was only 1 year that we were at the same school, and I moved out way early, and yeah, so it was always this independent streak, and I just, I took care of me all the time. And now I have to ask for a lot more help, and I'm learning how to do that. But it's helped so much to have names and to actually be able to articulate what's happening. That I feel is really important. And to go, well, my brain isn't keeping up today. Oh, my body isn't keeping up today. I'm having a flare up. I'm having whatever. I have gone through a lot of like types of food, eliminations of just like, no eggs, no dairy. What else did I go off of? No alums, so no onions, no garlic. It like takes all the fun out of everything, I swear. But I found that those would decrease my flare-ups if I was able to stay away from those types of foods. And that's been 10 years in the running. So, and then, yeah, I'm trying to censor myself a little bit, because there's been like 3 different diagnoses over the course of my life of like, there's this, and then there's this, and then there's this, that you have to just learn to care for yourself. And so the whole point of this channel, the whole reason that I'm here, the whole reason why I show my planning, is that I want to show that you can make little steps with whatever you have access to. So whether that's the time that you have, or people supporting you, or medical support, or anything. There's a whole lot of support that goes into those. And when you don't have that support, that's when I'm like, okay, how can we advocate for more support? Is it possible? is it possible? And I know people out there who don't have that support. I feel for you. I am so privileged and blessed to have the three of us here in a family. I have the best medical care I can have in America. Like, my husband's job really supports our medical plan that way, and going through a lot of expensive procedures that I know something like that could take out a whole life savings and more from a family. A lot of the people I connect to have chronic illnesses, or their children do. And sometimes I can't wrap my head around like what it's like to live that way. Like, it's way more than I even come across. There were a lot of times before I was diagnosed with things where I was just in bed all day. And I'm like, I don't know why everything hurts. I don't know why I can't. Because I would be a person who was independent and getting out and getting things done. And why did this happen? Why did this happen? So I tend not to go, well, why did this happen to me? That's not right. That's not where I am, at least not anymore. I mean, I still have my moments of like, what if things were different? Because I think, being honest, we all kind of go there no matter what we're going through. But I always settle back down into reality of like, this is how I am. And it's allowed me to connect with people who realize the importance of life. Like, the people I connect with are just so thankful to be here. They're so thankful to still get to see their children and be able to be with them, or connect with friends and family. Like, it's not an end, and it's not something to go and hide away from. But it's also something that you can, whatever way works for you to connect with people, if it's just through a phone, through the screen. I did have to challenge my, like, before I had kids, I was like, oh yeah, my kid won't have much screen time. And then you realize, like, there's an important factor for kids who have autism, or who are home more, or who are more susceptible to things, that's their lifeline to the outside world. And there's no shame about that. That's how they connect and find joy in the world. And I don't think there should be like, well, you should limit it because it's better for your health. No, I think it's better for your health if you are connecting to other humans and you are sharing your experiences and just receiving support. There's this huge part of just receiving support from one another that I think for some people, maybe it doesn't mean as much to just have a text message to you, and that maybe you get more support by people in person. And that can vary. Like, it can be like if you're a total extrovert and you just like get charged up with people in person, then this whole pandemic was probably pretty hard for you. But as an introvert, and my son is an introvert, and I know a lot of the people I connect with are introverts, that we get so much support and happiness from connecting online like this. And so that's why I felt like it was kind of important to come on here and just have a little deeper dive into kind of like the history that I've gone through. I know I touched on it very briefly in my trailer to this channel, but I wanted to go a little deeper. So if you'd like to share anything, like, it doesn't have to be please don't share medical advice because I think that is so individual. But if you want to share anything about your journey, whether it's about neurodivergency or whether it's about chronic illness or just about the overwhelm that you feel. I would love to hear it in the comments below. And yeah, so I think I've talked long enough. Yeah, it's about a half hour. So thank you for joining me. Please like and subscribe on your way out. I am kind of amazed how quickly this channel is growing. I didn't expect it. Like, it's baby steps, but if you think there's anyone else who can kind of relate to planning, and I do use tarot cards when I plan because the visuals just help me stick to, like, it kind of challenges me. If I see a drawing of something, it kind of opens my brain up to accepting a new idea and going in a different direction. And our brain can kind of work in a really curious way of like going, huh, you know, maybe that is the more important thing to me. And then just planning with pencil, because my plans always change. They're always changing, and I need something that I can always move around all my plans. And then there are weeks where it's a very low energy plan that I just don't have the energy to do that. But I kind of show up just because if I don't plan out the week, I feel really lost. I can't remember what's happening. I need a visual. But if I'm going to do it anyway, I might as well just film it like at my setup here at home. It makes it so easy to just sit down and film it. So why don't I just share that with you? And I also feel like it's a time where I'm sharing my life and my day-to-day and what I've been up to. And it's just kind of nice to share those ideas. So join me on those. Join me on my tiny tidies, because that's another way where I just kind of go around my home. And it may not be how other people do it. I may use things in a totally different way. And I get so inspired by people reusing things in a way that maybe wasn't intended. But I feel like that's the creativity part of things, right? And my main business behind all of that is one-on-one coaching for those who are neurodivergent or have chronic illness and they need support. So I communicate, either we have daily check-ins or we have weekly check-ins. And usually those check-ins last about a month because it is that deep. It is being your cheerleader every single day, knowing and saying, you know, you got this, and also helping you just process through all the ideas coming at you. Like most of my clients, we start out with kind of one smaller goal. Like it's not like this goal that you have to fix in a month. It's just like, here's what's happening this day or this week. How can we kind of think about things a little differently? What are some things that you can try? And it's a space. I'd like to create a space where people can fail a little bit, because it's safe. We have this container to say, well, you know, maybe let's try organizing this a little differently. Let's try a little different routine. Let's try to plan a little differently. Maybe there's something with their kids that they're trying to coordinate or figure out how to schedule or how to get everybody's schedules together. Like there's a lot of that excuse me, just needs, it just needs like this one-on-one support. And that's how I work best, is just one-on-one with someone, whether it's helping them sort through and tidy through some items that it's too emotional for them to go through alone, or it's this like daily support of just like, this is how we can get through maybe a harder time in your life, or you just need that support every day. And so we just kind of message back and forth for the day for like about 15 minutes. And it depends if you're the type of person who can really springboard off that energy in the morning, where if we connect in the morning, it's just like, oh, I have some momentum and ideas, and then I can like follow them through to the next morning. Or they can be kind of wrap-ups at the end of the day, and kind of you reflect back upon the day and get you ready for the next day, and you can act upon them that way. Like, there's no right answer to that, but I do know this, a lot of my clients kind of fall in one or the other. And so we work with, your personality and your needs and what works best for you. That's it. That's all of it. What works best for you. It doesn't mean what other people are doing. What works best for you. So if you're interested in any of that, that's all listed on katiesanders.com. And until next time, again, thank you for joining me. And I hope some of this made sense. And I'll see you next time. Take care.